What's up, everybody? Welcome in to the NFL Brekkie Show. Post week one, we are officially into the NFL regular season 2023, all but one game down. And that game is coming up on ESPN after Laz and I finish discussing week one. That is Aaron Rodgers' Gotham debut against Josh Allen and the Bills, a team with very real Super Bowl aspirations. But Laz, as we are 1 week into the season, it seems as though the defenses are just a step ahead of the offenses league-wide.
Every year, one of the things you hear coming into the season is that defense isn't a sticky stat. Turnovers, takeaways, these things fluctuate year to year, and that we do see a massive changeover in those top 10 power rankings of defensive units across the league. And then right out of the gate, we get statements from some of the big names that we saw last year. We'll get into a few of them as we go through the show, but off the top, you think about the Dallas Cowboys, their performance, what the San Francisco 49ers put down, the Baltimore Ravens. We're going to dive into each of these as we get going. But I think as this has been this era of offensive explosion across the NFL, earmarked by the glorious quarterback talent we've had coming in. We've spent time talking about the quarterbacks in the AFC and how dominant and tough a race that was going to be. If you didn't have one, you were not going to be part of the party and part of that contention on that side of the NFL and that side of the league and playoff picture. But defenses have responded. We're seeing aggression. We're seeing explosive and exotic blitzes. We're seeing defensive coordinators and defensive talent unafraid to attack and try and stop being dictated to, stop having offenses, give them all the motion and give them all the creativity and spread formations. And whether it's a Shanahan system or what we've seen with Kellen Moore and his offenses, moving that over the Chargers, what we've seen, again, branch of that Shanahan system, the Dolphins. We've seen so much high-octane offense across the league, and now we're seeing defense say, no, we're going to bring the high-octane now. We're going to bring our own version of explosive, and we're going to shake things up. So right off the top there, where else do we start? I'm trying to keep my blinkers on here, but let's go to that 40-0 absolute shellacking we saw from Dallas Cowboys over the New York Giants. The way the Cowboys season has ended in recent years, particularly in that last performance against San Francisco 49ers, when, the easy narrative was, they got run on, again, they couldn't stop the Shanahan run system, and the run game, but that wasn't the case in the playoffs a year ago. They actually did a decent job containing that. Offensively, there wasn't a performance to match. You could tell in the lead up that Micah Parsons and this defense were angry. They were playing, P-I double dollar sign ED off. I'm being a Disney man here. It's not language I was using watching the game yesterday. They were playing ferocious. They wanted to come out on the road in the wet in New York, make a big statement. And when a team has got the combination of speedy talent that Dallas has with elite playmakers, when you do look at the likes of, Trayvon Diggs and Micah Parsons, you bring in Stephon Gilmore, DeMarcus Lawrence still playing at a really high level. But that elite talent is also leading the work ethic in the room, which, love the Cowboys, hate the Cowboys, wherever you land on that. Love Mike Parsons, hate him. The man is absolutely maniacal in his work ethic and what he's tried to do in the offseason. When that all comes together, and then you've got Dan Quinn, who is a mad scientist and how he's deploying things, you get that overwhelming swarm of effort and physicality that just really rocks even a creative system that and a creative offensive mind like Brian Daboll. They shocked them from the start. A few early gains for the Giants on that first drive. Dallas gets the stop in the red zone, couple of negative plays, bad snap on third down. Then you get the blocked field goal by Werner Thomas, picked up by Noah Igbinoghene, take it to the house. And that's the type of names then you're getting contributions on defense. Werner Thomas had a couple of massive moments. He had the blocked field goal. He also had a moment where he was one-on-one mirror coverage against Darren Waller, who ran a little in-out, little stutter move, little fake inside-outside. Thomas, perfect coverage, balanced, confident play. Seeing Marquise Bell making a huge statement with some of his stops and, forcing negative plays. It's just contagious. So the Cowboys certainly leave a lasting note and a lasting taste from how we come away from that first slate on a Monday here, a Sunday over there. And honestly, I was trying to think what it reminded me of. And the best I could come to, and it's not really a surprise that I go here, is, but remember way back when you and me were a little younger. And I remember Stone Cold Steve Austin was sticking with Texas here, coming back from the neck injury when he was run over by Rikishi on the behest of Triple H. Really, he was getting surgery, but he was away, and young Laurie was shocked that Stone Cold had been away for so long. And when he came back, he didn't care about. It didn't seem like he cared about results or necessarily official matches, title shots, or anything like that. That was a long view. He just wanted to come in and make a statement, get some vengeance and get some revenge and take it out on whoever he thought might have been responsible. And that's exactly what we saw from the Dallas Cowboys. Walked in, didn't hear the bell, didn't see the referee at all, just came in to kick another team's you-know-what and walk out of there with a victory. Sure, they'll take it. But that's the type of energy we saw from Dallas opening up. And they weren't the only ones on the defensive side.
Yeah, they were doing it because Micah Parsons said so, but it was Wanye Thomas. It was Noah Igbenogany. It was indiscriminate, Laws. 11 different Cowboys defensive players had a quarterback pressure over the course of the game. Poor Daniel Jones, man. He's got to be seeing those guys in his nightmares on cue for how tough he was to be staying in there down on the wrong side of the most lopsided shutout win in Cowboys franchise history. A team that has a lot of rings, haven't won much in the last 3 decades, my friend, but this is a team that has rich history on its side. Biggest shutout win ever. Was it Elon Musk or Brian Dable who tweeted, "Blocking will be removed as a feature"? This offensive line, man. Daniel Jones, when he was pressured, 7 for 15 passing for 52 yards, 7 sacks, which means he was as likely to be sacked as he was to complete a pass when facing pressure, and the net yardage was about the same. His 3 highest pressure rates he's ever faced, it was 55% in this game, 23 times on 42 dropbacks. That is, think about it. 5 out of every 9 times he drops back, he's facing pressure. It was the greatest in his career, but numbers 2 and 3 were also head-to-heads against your Cowboys. In 2020, the Giants then fell to 0-5 in Week 5. I believe that game was in Dallas because of all the pressures he faced. And then last season, the game I was at, Monday Night Football, MetLife Stadium, they sacked Daniel Jones 5 times in a 7-point win. That game was more competitive. This was a laugher. Thankfully for the Giants and the team that, had the question coming in was how would they build on last season? For them, it's just got to be a mental reset. But yeah, we're accustomed to see Dallas put the G-men under pressure. A team that's famous for defense, Laws, and their color scheme, for whatever reasons, just screams at that purple and black. It almost looks like a bruise. Welcoming C.J. Stroud to the NFL with a little bit of bruising in a game that had scoregami 25-9, the first ever 25-9 final. And man, they did not give that rookie any room to breathe. 3.1 yards per carry for the Texans, 4 yards per pass attempt, whether they were trying to trudge along on the ground or in the air. They had to settle for 3 field goals over the course of 60 minutes, never got to the end zone. And in the first quarter, poor C.J. Stroud, 4 completions. The average downfield was actually minus 3.3 yards, which is, that's 3 full meters behind the line of scrimmage was his average completion. That's a tunnel screen, bubble screen. Just let me get it out of my hands. And it was the Roquan Smith who had a sack and 16 tackles. And it was the Patrick Queen, those terrific off-ball linebackers that Baltimore features. But also, Odafe Owe had three QB hits, not just pressures, but QB hits. And then a guy who they line up as, a slot corner. He's played a little bit of safety in the past. Brandon Stevens had a heck of a game as well. So the Ravens getting the contributions they want, and that defense is going to need to carry them as they just continue to face just gutting offensive injuries. But for the Ravens, no trap game there. We've seen a couple teams fall into trap games league-wide. Baltimore came out, stamped out the Texans. They're 1-0 on the season, and they have that defense to thank.
Yeah, you mentioned the injuries there, which is so tough to see on the offensive side. And, it wasn't a banner day for Lamar Jackson. It didn't need to be. That's actually a consistent theme with some of the big hitting teams that got some strong victories, is that it didn't actually have to have the quarterback have a stellar day. But Ronnie Stanley and Tyler Linderbaum looking like we could see some time out here for 2 absolute pillars of that offensive line. And when we talked about why the Ravens are my Super Bowl pick, why I thought they could emerge from the AFC, is that when you paired them up against a lot of other contenders across the league, whether that across the AFC in particular, whether that was a team like the Chargers or a team like the Jaguars or a team like the Bengals, when you're looking across some of those other rosters, it felt like the Ravens had one of the best offensive lines. Even a team like Kansas City Chiefs that has changeover at the tackle spots and has some flux at some really pivotal spots on the roster there. The Ravens felt like they were coming in with the strength, and immediately that takes a hit, and obviously J.K. Dobbins as well. But defensively, those David Ajabo registering a sack, another name that we needed to see them bring along. That edge rusher position was such a question mark. Justin Matabike getting in on the action. If those young players are taking that step forward, that is immense for a Ravens team that is seeing, once again, and I know this is going to be, they're ranked highly in, starting snaps lost to injury in 2022. It's a Football Outsiders metric. This is a team that's suffered some very frustrating campaigns of late, and this is starting to feel a little similar, at least on the offensive side. Defense needs to step up. Okay, last one. And this is one where I have to eat a little bit of crow. Not because of the result. I had 49ers taking care of business against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but on the defensive side of things, Drake Jackson, someone that you were more of a fan of in the draft when he came out.
Stock going up. New York Sack Exchange, San Fran Sack Exchange. The stock's going up.
You were a bigger fan than me. I didn't know if he was a sum of his parts. Certainly looked the part there, rushing off the edge. And someone who in college had his weight fluctuate like 40 to 50 pounds, not on any questions of him. This was a request from the program as his role and position was shifted around across that defensive line. So perhaps finding a more settled home there and a nice place to settle yourself down on that defensive line of the San Francisco 49ers. You immediately see the impact, Javon Hargrave getting his name on the score sheet there in terms of bringing up backfield production and just halting a Steelers team. We'll touch on the Steelers a little more, but the Steelers had picked up a whole bunch of hype. Kenny Pickett had a lovely preseason. We'd seen big gains like George Pickens and Deontay Johnson downfield. And Kenny Pickett was someone that it felt like people wanted to make fetch happen. Just stop, Gretchen. Fetch isn't going to happen. They wanted to make it a thing. Because he does have some talent and he has some playmaking ability and he does have some cavalier nature to the way he goes about things, even if he's not the most physically imposing quarterback on the quarterback menu across the NFL in terms of talent, arm strength, those kind of things. But people really wanted to will this, especially when you consider the Steelers winning culture, Mike Tomlin. You expect the defense to be better, but no. The San Francisco 49ers shut that thing down from the get-go, reducing running back production to, look, if you had invested in that Steelers backfield in fantasy, but it was Najee Harris, or perhaps you thought it was going to be the Warren takeover show, they just made them ineffective. They weren't able to lean on one side of their offense at any point, the receiving weapons or the running game, to try and get things on schedule. That's San Francisco 49ers, much like Dallas Cowboys. You wonder year on year, is defense going to be sticky? Two of the elite units in 2022, along with the Ravens, who really came along after the trade for Roquan Smith, and they showed that was absolutely not something that was going to fall off with age or just time or roster shifting or anything like that. Those three absolutely bona fide in week one, and the 49ers really stamping it. And we can touch on some of their offensive output, but once again, we know that there's some very, very talented, imposing matchups that they're going to throw at you from the get-go, punch you in the mouth up front on that defensive line. The linebackers are unbelievable. Fred Warner having his moments again. Dre Greenlaw continually underrated. And then you get, working there in the secondary, being able to capitalize and pick off balls as well. It's once again looking like a complete dominant unit that doesn't want to go away.
Yeah, Talanoa Hufanga, one of the breakout players from last season, had the aforementioned interception. It was a play another defensive player made. My memory is escaping me who exactly had the pass breakup, but he was right there. Yeah, Fred Warner is always that guy in the middle. I mean, Bosa wasn't even overwhelming. He didn't need to be. Lost from the jump. The Niners punched the Steelers in the mouth, and there's always that concern for teams from the West Coast in the U.S. heading east. The early kickoff, it feels like 10 a.m. local to their body clocks. Man, they got up early and they ate. First 5 drives for the Steelers offense were 5 3-and-outs, where they gained a total of -9 yards. You get 5 offensive possessions. You look up at the scoreboard, the other team has 20 points. You have 0. You have 0 first downs. It's just devastating. And then from there, much like the Giants, it was just a downward spiral for the Steelers. So it just kind of piles on the hot takes and the concern about what is this team ceiling? Were they a flash in the pan? Do we need to move on from Kenny Pickett? Najee Harris, has he lost it? Pumping the brakes. Hello from Puerto Rico. But it's one of those things, Laz, where San Francisco took control of that game. They didn't give it back. We saw a team like Philadelphia take control of the game, let the Patriots back in it. Cowboys, the Niners, 2 teams elsewhere on the short list of NFC contenders, they took a grasp of the game and they said, we'll take our win, get on our team charter, and head back home. Thank you. very much. And Laz, that brings us, I mentioned there maybe some hot takes about Kenny Pickett's lack of a future. Teams, people already wanting to push the eject button on the season and the team's title hopes. That brings us to a new segment that we are quite excited about because it combines many of our favorite things, much like a value meal. In fact, it combines hot takes and it combines, for the People's Show, the people's voice. This is our Hot Take Hotline presented by Macca's, where every week we will take in your hot takes and fresh off the breakfast griddle, we're going to break them down. And Laz, we actually stay in San Francisco, or with San Francisco, I should say, for one of our Hot Take Hotline elements, and an offensive player. And I'll read the hot take to you first and get your thoughts, and we'll make this like a hot potato. We'll go through this quickly. Nick B, his hot take is, and I'm quoting, Brandon Ayuk leads the NFL in receptions at the end of the season.
I mean, my initial response when that flowed through to me, when the seething level of that hot, like that's a Macca's item where you asking for some extra chili on there. There's some heat to that, considering what we saw. Let's just take, what we saw in the Chargers and the Dolphins game and some of the offensive explosion. Your pick to go, your pick to go with 1,500 yards this season, Tyreek Hill.
By the way, that my pick was for the season, not for the game. Yeah. It seemed like he was well on his way for a moment.
He was trying. He wants this done by Thanksgiving, as far as you're concerned. So there's going to be some competition about leading the league in receptions. And that's what Nick said here, receptions, not receiving yards. I think for Ayuk, who I was hammering the drum for in preseason, definitely didn't get enough of him in fantasy, despite my efforts. This is a guy who I believe is the wide receiver one in San Francisco. I think he's a more complete wide receiver than Debo. Debo got the very tropey off-season, preseason, like, he's lost weight. He's in the best shape of his life. He's in the best shape since his breakout campaign. But Brandon Ayuk has been on an ascendant track with the 49ers. Great chemistry with Brock Purdy. He was in the outhouse, in the doghouse with Kyle Shanahan for some reason a couple of years ago, but has powered his way out of that. The chemistry with Purdy is absolutely apparent. And whilst I think that Brandon Ayuk can absolutely make himself a Pro Bowler this year, really has a shot at making a run at an All-Pro nod as well, if he's going to keep up this rate. I don't think he's going to lead the league in reception. I think there's a few other spots where on a team like 49ers, there's going to be weeks where it's down at 3 catches, 4 catches, 5 catches for Ayuk. Lucky he's very efficient, makes the most of them, and is certainly a red zone presence, as he showed with 2 scores to go along with his 129 yards on 8 grabs. But there are some teams that are a little more channeled. The target alleyways are a little more narrow. You look at a team like Miami, where it really does feel like it's going to go to Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle on a lot of snaps. You look at, it wasn't a massive day for Devontae Adams, but you don't expect the ball to go a whole bunch of different directions in Las Vegas. We can go across the league and list off some of the leaders in receptions. We'll see Stephon Diggs and Garrett Wilson, 2 absolute candidates to get 10 plus targets, 12 plus targets week in, week out for their teams. They'll go at it on Monday Night Football. He is hoping the weather doesn't delay that one. Or if it does, it's not too much. Stay tuned to see how that goes. But all in all, no, I don't think Brandon Ayuk is going to. It's a great hot take. I don't think it will come off in the end, but I do think this is someone who may very well throw themselves in All-Pro consideration. Pro Bowl, I'm ready to tick off. I was ready to tick off before week 1 got underway for Ayuk, but let's see. Let's pump the brakes on leading the league in receptions, but certainly All-Pro consideration could be coming for Ayuk.
Laz, I got good news, great news, bad news, and worse news with this. The good news is Ayuk had 8 catches on 8 targets for 129 yards and 2 scores. Those are wide receiver 1 numbers. He looked like a different Brandon out there who plied his trade in San Francisco for a while. Brandon Lloyd, a guy who was just catching everything thrown his way. That's the good news. And this is for a guy who, his career high coming in was last year, 78 catches, 60, 56, 78. He's on the ascendancy as it feels that team is. That was my pick to come out of the NFC. That I'm not stepping back on that at all after watching them through 1 week on the road. That's the good news. The great news is he's a willing blocker as well. You want to talk about the 2 highlight reel touchdown receptions he had? How about the touchdown run from Christian McCaffrey? He's running 30 yards upfield to put face mask on face mask with a safety and turn that from a 30-yard gain by Christian McCaffrey to a 65-yard to the crib touchdown. Herm Edwards on NFL Blitz, that was his favorite play of the day, partially because he coached Ayuk at University at Arizona State, but also just that extra effort play from Ayuk there. He's never gonna come off the field because no matter what your formation is, no matter what your personnel package is, no matter what you're asking, he's gonna be on there and he's gonna earn himself some extra looks. He could well get 100 receptions this season. Well, the bad news is 3 players last year had 110. And one of those guys, the worst news, was named Tyreek Hill, who had 11 catches on 15 targets for 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, for a team that, is going to throw the ball a lot more than San Francisco will. And as good as Brock Purdy looked, and that may have been his best regular season performance, that was his first game ever with multiple touchdown passes. Again, it's a short career, but that was the first time he had ever had multiple touchdown passes targeting wide receivers. This isn't a guy who's going to just over volume it out wide. He's got one of the best tight ends in the NFL in George Kittle. He has Christian McCaffrey, who's amazing out of the backfield. It's going to be a volume concern for Ayuk, but that's the thing with this team. On any given day, you don't know who's going to break out, and what makes them so dangerous and such a real threat, home or away, whether it's week 1 in Pittsburgh or, hypothetically speaking, in an NFC championship game. Well, Oz, that brings us to our next Hot Take Hotline from Corey, and this is a scorching take as well, because this involves not my NFC champ, but my AFC champ and Super Bowl champ, who did not look any of the part in week 1, a 24-3 road loss at the Dog Pound. Corey says, quote, Cincinnati Bengals are not making the playoffs, Laws?
Too spicy, just a little too much heat there. Look, sometimes you get caught just pouring a little too much, whatever hot sauce, whatever heat you like to work with there. Sometimes you just get caught leaving it a little too long. You take a bite, Look, the Bengals, here's why. Look, the Bengals showing against the Browns' immensely impressive and improved defense was certainly concerning in a 24-hour span. But let's look at the variables here that we know will not be a factor week in, week out. 1, the weather. It was cold. It was wet. It was windy. It was unpleasant. It was not delightful circumstances to be throwing the football around, especially Joe Burrow, for me, is still the reigning, defending number 2 quarterback in the NFL. But this is not someone with a power arm. This is not someone with the easy 70 to 75-yard downfield, ropes and lasers that he can fire from his right shoulder. He is someone who is who has made his way with enough arm strength, but more placement, timing, accuracy, creativity, trajectory control, touch, these kind of things. So throwing guys open. So it's not great conditions for that. We're also looking at the fact that he missed so much of the preseason. There's going to be rust there. I'm not saying that the calf ailment is still hampering him, but it does, when you do miss that extended run up to week 1, there's a very good chance that you're not going to be as in rhythm. There's also some unfamiliar opponent here. Yes, the Browns are a division rival, but this is a new scheme. This is a new defensive coordinator. There is new talent on that defensive line. They make big investments to get someone opposite of Myles Garrett to be rushing. So it's not just, a defensive player of the year candidate that you have to be concerned about. You invest in the interior of the defense as well. We know they've had talent on the back end for quite some time. So this is your first look in live snaps at a new and improved unit. Yes, again, familiar in terms of the name, the team that you're lining up against, but the names and the style in which they're being deployed, something new, you expect them to respond. So then throw in the fact that week 1 is always going to throw some shenanigans and some bizarre, crazy results. So I think those 3 make me feel like, hey, let's not throw the Bengals out of the playoff picture. That's still a very talented team with a very smart defensive coordinator, with plenty of potency on offense. Yes, they got rocked. Yes, this is, with the history between these 2 franchises, this is a bitter one to take. I saw Ben Baby, our ESPN reporter in the Bengals locker room, shared some footage from
NFL Brekkie Show alumnus Ben Baby,
and friend of the show, Ben shared some footage of Jamar Chase saying, "Look, this one's tough to take because I called those guys elves before the game." An interesting pregame insult, certainly one that didn't. The trash talk didn't work too well on the Bengals side of things, but no, the quality on the roster, the level to which their quarterback can play. It wasn't on show yesterday, but their feeling of the investment they've made in the offensive line that you hope will gel and continue to improve as they get more live preseason snaps are something, but live regular season snaps. I'm pumping the brakes on that. I think of all the teams that had a few shockers here, the Bengals are one that it was a week one alarming. It was a shock more than it is a long-term concern.
Laws, and in one of the most disrespectful moments of the season, the young season, the Bengals' first snap in Browns territory, Myles Garrett lined up at middle linebacker, dribbling an invisible basketball in front of the Bengals center before he blows by him and leads to a sack by one of their other pass rushers. I can't remember who got the sack, but that was just the statement that the Browns made. Jim Schwartz, their new DC, they are ready to rock and roll. But for this particular question, this is my Super Bowl champion. I take this very seriously. I have to refer to the federal Bureau of Investigation. So I have my some notes here, some documentation, and first thing you got to do is look at precedent. Well, what happened in week one for these Bengals last year? Well, our very own saying Joe Burrow threw for 4 interceptions in a loss. In fact, the Bengals lost week one, week two. They started 2-3. And they were a personal foul away from an overtime in the AFC Championship game. In fact, I picked this team not to win the division. I actually said the Ravens' schedule, how it meets out, I actually think the Ravens may win this division, but the Bengals, I think, will get better as the season goes along. I didn't think they'd lose 24-3 in week one by any means, but I also didn't think Joe Burrow would have not just a career low in passing yards, but the lowest yards per attempt we have seen in the NFL in week one in 39 years. He got demolished by that blitz, 3 for 12, 23 against the blitz. One of the better pass rushes that he'll see in the AFC. And this is just a tough venue for him, man. He's 1-5 in his career against the Browns. And this team won the division, the Bengals, the last 2 years. So it's always, for whatever reason, a place they just can't win, the dog pound. Then they find a way and finish with a much better record than this team. And another reason I'm not having concern, Laws, 13 for 24 passing for 143 yards, not even 6 yards per attempt. But that wasn't Joe Burrow. That was a guy, Rain Dakota Prescott, playing in the rain in New York, and his team won 40-0. So there are QB stats that the Bengals tapped out a little bit here. Burrow 7 for 19 passing, 49 yards targeting receivers. We know that's not going to continue. Listen, if we're having this conversation and 2-3 last year is now 2-4 this year with some tough games they have in the middle of the season, I'm concerned. But looking at what's happening in Pittsburgh and some injury issues in Baltimore, I'm not too high on the Browns. I'm not too low on the Bengals at the moment. We knew this was going to be a dog fight between cats and dogs, Bengals and Browns. So the Bengals are still making the playoffs, but they, like the Giants, they want to reset. Hit the reset button after week one.
Yeah, but unlike the Giants, as you mentioned, they got Joe Burrow out of there. They did ease up towards the end there. They pulled Joe Burrow out of there. The Giants leaving Daniel Jones in, you touched on a bit earlier. More concerned about that, especially having seen what happened to Dak Prescott a few years back when he absolutely got rocked against the Falcons. I think it was Adrian Claiborne got half a dozen sacks on him, and there was impact for the rest of the season and into the next season until Dak seemingly got back into better form. I'm more than fine with the Bengals in that situation, knowing look, cue in the rack time here. We need to get out of here. We need to reset, recalibrate, have a look at what went wrong, and get to week two. But
and last year, Laz, look at quarterbacks who didn't play in the preseason. They went 3-8 in week one. Joe Burrow was an injury-related thing that he didn't play in week one. But again, Dak did not play in the preseason. His team won, but that's not you're going to get better for Dak Prescott as well. So I expect a QB downtick for these guys who didn't play preseason ball.
Well, while we're on QB downticks and while we're on disappointing performances, let's circle to our last one. This is a combined entry on the Hot Take Hotline. A couple of Giants fans calling in, messaging in here. Carl saying the Giants put up less of a fight than the New York Jets have for the last 15 years. They're going to be battling Houston for the first pick of the draft. Houston, who do not own their first-round pick, but obviously can still earn that for another team, the Cardinals, that might be finding themselves in that realm of the first pick. And then Peter Hooley, who a noted NBL voice and commentator in the region, he appears on ESPN. He appears on ESPN with regularity. Hools, I mean, he was a little less, I'd say, a touch less eloquent, shall I say, in how he put it. Or very succinct, I should say. He just said, fire everyone. Play Saquon at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, defense, everything.
Would help with special team flexibility.
Yeah, I
fantasy teams,
appreciate the
I should say.
sentiment. I appreciate the sentiment from Halls, particularly given the team that, elicited such sentiment from him. I'm happy to be the Dallas Cowboys. But I don't think that this is what we see from the Giants this season. We can bring up weather again. We can bring up the fact that sometimes you just run into an angry buzzsaw. Sometimes you just run into an overwhelming defense that is fired up and ready to just disrupt you from the get-go. And when you look at I know we're expecting, the next, the 2.0 version of this Brian Daboll, Daniel Jones marriage here with Darren Waller coming in and Jalen Hyatt being picked in the draft, adding some skill there. Oh, the offensive line should take another tick with some more investment in the interior, and hopefully Evan Neal marries Andrew Thomas's progression. And, yes, after a rough year one, starts to really take off in year two. So there's a lot of, relatively sound logic for optimism why this could be better. But these rosters are at different points, whether you like it or not, and whatever hot takes are out there, that people would prefer Daniel Jones over Dak Prescott, even like just how anybody could watch those two play and what they command at the line of scrimmage and come up with that. I have no idea. But regardless, these two teams are on different tiers. They have different expectations. They have different demands on them, I think, from those expectations as well. It will get better for the Giants. They will have days where the way that Daboll orchestrates an offense, the smoke and mirrors, the creativity before the snap, getting guys on the move, putting Daniel Jones in rhythm to let his playmakers do work. Remember, this is a guy that ranked very low down in average depth of target last year, because he was able to, find his playmakers as non-household names as so many of his playmakers were. He's able to find speedy receivers and receiving talent in motion, in movement, and in space to gain those yards after the catch. They will have better days where that works and you don't have just a very talented, athletic, and fast defense flying off the line ready to blow everything up before it can get going. I don't think this is a cause for massive panic throughout the roster for the Giants. I don't think Saquon needs to play every single position, but I do think, and this is something I said when Daniel Jones got his $40 million deal and puts him on that fringe of the top 10 in terms of average quarterback salary per year. I don't think they should have paid a average quarterback, a quarterback that ranks in that kind of top 12 to top 16, 17, 18 range, that money when he's being buoyed by an offensive genius, to say, or an absolutely very, very, very capable, gifted offensive mind in Brian Daboll, when you could be looking for a more complete and talented option, that's through the draft, at that position to further unlock Brian Daboll and what he can do. It feels like they were paying someone that they wanted to make work and that they were happy to see progression on, but the underlying numbers showed that there was so much of this was derived from the surrounding circumstances, which is always going to be a part of the equation with quarterbacks, but such a massive proportion of it seemed to be from there. And the expectation that Daniel Jones was going to step up even more, and that came with that $40 million tag, I think this is a bit of an exposure for it, that he can't get you out of spots like that. The Dallas Cowboys are going to make a lot of offenses look like they're on absolute struggle street throughout this campaign. But week one, with a game plan in mind, you saw some effective play calling early throughout the first half of that drive, of their opening drive. And then once the Cowboys shut that down, it was tee off time from there. And by the end of it, it was forget Parsons and Lawrence and Osoro Digizua getting the names on the sheet. Now we're talking about Dante Fowler and Dorrance Armstrong and Sam Williams teeing off, and it really started to stack up. So I don't think we need to fire everybody, but if I'm a Giants fan, that quarterback contract is not sitting too well with me.
Yeah.
I'm thankful that it's not a 5, 6, 7-year deal, one of those long extensions. It is just a few years at that mark. But I'm seeing that. I'm asking the question of, while I still have belief in this roster, have we anchored our head coach and this offensive maestro quite a bit by investing so heavily in a quarterback that he has to play with rather than play through?
Yeah, I mean, laws. It's something. It's the stupid tax. Like they did not pick up the 5th-year option on Daniel Jones. Thus, they were in a position after his price goes up that they now have to pay him that $40 million average annual value, where had they picked up the 5th-year option, they would have gotten an extra year of evaluation to really say, what is he worth? What is the body of work worth? And not hinged to one of the most dynamic running backs in the NFL in Saquon Barkley. I agree with the take of do more with Saquon Barkley, namely keep him in to protect more, 7 sacks allowed, and maybe throwing the ball a little bit more out of the backfield to give the defense a little bit more to think about. He was targeted 4 times as a receiver, had 3 catches, only 12 yards, but his career highs in receptions, receiving yards, targets were all as a rookie in 2018. He had 4 receiving touchdowns as a rookie in 2018. He's had 4 since. So they've gone away from using him as much in the passing game in the red zone and just giving a team with a great pass rush just something else to think about. But yeah, Brian Daboll, Coach of the Year, Mike Kafka, Offensive Coordinator, Wink Martindale, Defensive Coordinator, all of whom are in year 2 with the Giants. We are, 1 regulation game removed from this team having its, 2 regulation games removed from them having their first playoff win since Super Bowl 46. They won Super Bowl 46, hadn't won a playoff game until that upset in Minnesota last year. Hey, Brian Daboll's done it. Lose a game that was playing with house money anyway. 1 game removed. This year's season opener, an embarrassment at home. But I think you were being a little bit too optimistic. If you expected this team to be any better than 3rd in that division.
How are we feeling after the hot take hotline? Do we think we've helped people there, Phil? I mean, this is as the takes get to a seething level, and this might be the spiciest time of year. 24 hours, not even 24 hours removed. What are we? 16 hours removed from the last game finishing, from the first Sunday slate. We still got Monday Night Football ahead. This is the Monday after week 1, American time, Tuesday after week 1, Australian time, is when we are at our most emotional. But I feel like as we've opened up the phone line, and going forward, we're going to be doing this thing week in, week out. Send it in via voice memo. Send it in a video message if you really want. You can text me. Well, my number's not there, but the DMs are open. The comments when we throw it out on a Monday.
I'll tweet out Loz's phone number. Don't worry about it. We'll get it out.
Just check that out. It's going to be do you think we go as large as Mike Jones did back in the day when his number came out on one of the hottest tracks of that summer? Perhaps not, but yes, send him in because look, takery is fun. We know hot takes are part of the business. They're part of being a fan. They're part of being in the media. They're part of talking about this lovely game of NFL that we so love. So we're hoping to, as we open up the line and open up our hearts, that we're able to work through some of these, pour water on some and a little hot sauce to some others. But Phil, that's we put the phone down. We hang up the hot take hotline.
Like Novak Djokovic.
There we go. And then we ask another question. As we're prone to do at this time of year, this is fine.
This is fine. This is fine. Well,
fine?
Yeah. This is my brainchild because that meme is just applicable anywhere. A lot of teams with a disappointing week 1, and we'll go through these pretty quickly. We only have about 10 minutes left in show. Teams that had a disappointing week 1, that is it the sign of greater concern? And we've already, I think, allayed some of the fears with the Giants. We're going to go now to my team, my Denver Broncos, who last season were, they led the NFL in unders, 16.9 points per game, last in the league in scoring, first time that's ever happened since they made the AFL to NFL jump. And wouldn't you know it, they couldn't even get to 16.9, Loz. They landed on 16 thanks to a Will Lutz missed extra point. He also missed a field goal. And they lose the most winnable division game they'll have all year at home to the Raiders. Now, for me, the offensive concerns, I'm not as worried about those. Russell Wilson, no Jerry Jeudy. He found 10 different receivers, spread the ball around well. He was great outside the pocket. He maybe vacated the pocket a little early, but I don't criticize him too much because he took a career high 55 sacks last year. 73% passing outside the pocket, 79 yards, both of his touchdowns. That matched his entire 2022 season total for passing touchdowns outside the pocket. He was 5 of 6 for 42 yards under pressure. My concern, the Broncos defense couldn't get the Raiders off the field. You kick it away, you punt it away, 4 or 5:08 to go, 2 timeouts, and they run a 5-minute offense on your home field in the season opener. That's why this is not fine. But my ceiling for the Broncos, I always said 8 or 9 wins. Maybe now that's 7 or 8 because I had them winning this game. If any Broncos supporters or anyone out there had the Broncos winning double-digit games to begin with this season, they stepped into the wrong bakery in Denver, Colorado. Maybe came out feeling a little light on their feet. And I mean, I could use some of that optimism, but Denver, this is fine because this is exactly who we thought they were, except the defense a little porous in the game's waning moments.
Can I make you feel a little bit better about the Broncos just quickly before we move on to the next team? Courtesy of Bill Barnwell. The Giants on Sunday night against the Cowboys generated negative 23.8 offensive EPA.
Cool.
The Broncos game from the COVID year where Kendall Hinton played quarterback against the Saints was minus 23.7. So what? So Kendall Hinton still not as bad. Broncos.
And they just cut him too, poor guy.
For stepping out. Kendall Hinton, as you mentioned, is still currently available as a free agent if you are a quarterback or wide receiver needy. Look, we touched on the Steelers a little bit against the 49ers. We'll make that quick. Look, the Steelers will be solid because the Steelers are always solid at best. But I think this is just a warning for getting hyped up over a month of really good preseason action. You mentioned against slow motion videos coming out of training camp, not to buy in too much there across the league, not just with the Steelers. I believe I was in reference to another team that might have been the Jets. But I think when you look at what they put up in preseason, a couple of splash plays hinting at something more substantial, we just need to pump the brakes. The Steelers, look, they'll be solid because the Steelers are always solid. They'll be sound because the Steelers are always sound. Expect better from that defense, Mike Tomlin, etc. But I think this is fine enough, but I don't think the ceiling is there that some had on the Steelers taking that massive step. The other one, though, where I think there is a bit more concern, particularly just because there's injury related here, the Seahawks absolutely, summed up by Geno Smith getting caught on camera, on microphone, I should say, somehow not swearing as Aaron Donald came free up the middle, up the A gap and head down upon him. And I believe it was just an, oh my God, that he explained as an forever young number 99 honed in on that quarterback spot there. But the Seahawks with the offensive weapons, Jackson Smith and Jigba joining Metcalf and Lockett on offense, they put up 13 points. They get out-coached, outplayed, out-schemed by the Tutu Atwell and Puka Nacua show with a strong featuring act from Matthew Stafford, who showed the arm is looking plenty fine as he just rips some throws across the field there. Sean McVay masterclass there in week one. What makes me concerned isn't just the scoreboard, isn't just the out-coaching. Charles Cross and Abe Lucas, their bookend tackles that they got in the same draft class last year, both now dealing with injuries. You destabilize that offensive line. We talk about and I'm going to be quick here. We talk about trademark plays of a season where, certain teams have a certain go-to play that seems to be monochromatic week in, week out. We see it hit, we see it explosive on TV, and it's something that sticks with us. Last year, the Geno Smith deep ball was certainly there, targeting those talented receivers. If that line isn't able to hold up on the outside, if they're dealing with a constant rotation and then a constant turnstile at the right and left tackle spots, that type of play that we got used to and we hoped we'd see more of from Geno Smith, not just a one-year sample size, hope it'd grow, that's going to take a huge shot. So that's why that question mark is in bold, italics, underlined. Maybe I got some clip art and used a weird font from that. Shout out, remember clip art? That's a little more concerning for me with the Seattle Seahawks. I think there's some foundational issues that could have arisen in week one that could carry on longer term.
Yeah, not fine are the Seahawks. Punched above their weight class last year to make a wild card run. We thought it'd be a two-horse race in the NFC West. It does not look that way. Seattle, 12 yards on 14 offensive plays after halftime. Geno Smith 0 for 5 on second and third down. Laz, in the second half, when he dropped back to pass, it was a negative 17 net yard result when you consider his forward passing and the yards lost and sacks. Convert that with no Cooper Kupp for the Rams, yet Tutu and Puka go each for 119, the first Rams duo to both go over 100 yards in week one since Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt 20 years ago. They're averaging better than 10 yards per attempt when targeting Tutu and Puka.
I mean,
in front of the 12th man.
It's been a week one where we've seen decade-long records or streaks be broken. We saw CJ Stroud become the first quarterback since Brett Favre, I believe, back with the Packers decades ago to catch his own first passing attempt. That was something special, or the first reception he registered. We saw, and what the Cowboys did hasn't been done, I believe, since 1999 with the 40-point shutout on the road to open the week. We're seeing some long streaks be broken. That points to a pretty historic and pretty topsy-turvy week one. There's some serious questions there. This is fine. Is this fine? Question marks. Flip it around. We're just not sure, Phil, but we move on.
Yeah, it's toasty in the Northwest. It's toasty in Pittsburgh and Lodge. We got some heat coming up to close out the show. Backed by popular demand, our best props for the Week 1 finale. It's brought to you by Tab. We're so happy to have them on board as a sponsor again and a partner in this endeavor. And these markets are all available on tab.com.au. And with some weather that's going on here in the Northeast, and as well at MetLife Stadium, you mentioned potential weather delays. These markets are fluctuating a little bit. So if you are keen on any of these markets, have a look at Tab and lock them in if you like the number, because it's gonna move all over the place. But Laz, as somebody who is the two-time reigning, defending, undisputed champion of popular demand, I will let you step to the tee box first.
All right. I am going to endeavor to be brief, quick, concise here. Look, so much talk about the wide receiver core and Aaron Rodgers, the names. I mentioned the slow-mo glossy film from preseason and training camp to Garrett Wilson, but that's not where I'm going. I'm going to Old Faithful here because Randall Cobb looks like he's going to get plenty of snaps in the slot position there. His number has jumped from 20 up to 25.5 yards. That's the over-under line. I'm going over there. It's currently at $2.35, going over. If that weather is in, we see that play a factor. I perhaps see a slower start in terms of the performative deep ball that Aaron Rodgers is known for, looking over the middle of the field, finding old, reliable, old faithful Randall Cobb, who he brought into the picture there. So give me that at over 25.5 yards at $2.35.
Laz, I see two defenses, especially Buffalo, with aptitude. And I'm with you in terms of a slow start, but I'm thinking it's a slow start across the board. We've seen scoring down. We've seen offenses down. Yards per drive across the league, 25. Last year it was over 31. That's a 16% reduction. I think it'll get there, but the defense is undoubtedly league-wide, except for in the Chargers-Dolphins game. The defense is ahead of the offense right now. I think we're going to see that early in this game, especially if there are wet, miserable conditions, which it looks like we have. Give me the first half under 22.5 points. This was at 23.5, and it shaved down. I locked it in under 22.5 at $1.90. That's my number. That's my best play.
Always a little, you can hear the rumblings when you and me are thinking alike. You can hear the rumblings. And that's why
that's never a good sign, by the way. Historically, that does not go well.
I've got the second half as the highest scoring half at $2.15, thinking similar. Slow start. New offensive weapons getting those first, yes, there's some preseason snaps for the Jets, but regular season snaps, regular season action. It's a different pace. It's a different intensity. Could take some time to warm up there. Two very talented defenses. Game. Yeah, you got two talented defenses. You want it, both quarterbacks and both the offensive coordinators want to get a good look at that and make adjustments as they go. So that's where I'm going. All right, Phil, let's you give us our last one here and let's land this ship.
All right, so Dalvin Cook on his debut against his brother, James Cook. Fun little subplot there in the shadows of New York City. James Cook, second-year player, terrific out of the backfield. The Bills go ahead and they bring in Damian Harris. They have Latavius Murray. It's a something of a crowded depth chart. I think you're going to see a couple 12 personnel sets, but with James Cook out wide in a receiving role, I think his rushing total comes in under the 45.5 it's listed at $1.75. And this number is getting chipped down both in the U.S. and in Australia. So this is one, again, if you agree with me, I would jump on that now. James Cook under 45.5 rush yards, $1.75. So I'm going to go $1.75, $1.90. You're north of $2 on both of yours, which is on brand for both of us. Slow and I run the ball on first down. I know that you are philosophically against, but those are our tips. And we do, again, urge you to gamble responsibly. And if you are keen, you can get free and confidential support at 1-800-858-858 or go online to gamblinghelponline.org.au. Laz, did I get all that right?
You did. We just asked the question, what are you really gambling with? Set a deposit limit. All right, as you can see, we've got the information there on the bottom of the screen. Phil, it is time to get on out of here. It is, but as we do, just that sense that football is back is permeating through the group chats. I know are alive across the board. I went into yesterday morning off a weekend where my sister, who lives in London, was at brunch with her boyfriend, and she messaged me saying, he just wants to know what you reckon of his fantasy lineup. So we are bridging the world with this international football fandom. The positive vibes are everywhere. I got buddies who are on a 6-day tour de force that culminates tonight at Monday Night Football that have flown out from Australia to do the season opener, Kansas City Chiefs losing to the Lions, a Vegas draft, Sunday Night Football to see the Cowboys lay an absolute hurting on the Giants, and then backing it up, same stadium tonight with the Bills and Jets in a primetime Monday Night Football showdown that you can catch on ESPN 10:15 a.m.
They could have made a little jaunt to New England as well. Foxborough to New York is a short flight. It's like half an hour.
The international fandom, the vibes are so strong. It's growing every year. Each year, the talk, the noise, the volume, the love around it grows. Those are just two of the personal examples that have hit my life, but we love that. But Phil, you say land the bird. I say, land the starship or wherever I come down with it. But let's get on out of here and get ready for an absolute barn burner. As you can tell, it's time to go.
That's my cue.
That's your cue.
That's my cue to go. Aaron Rodgers trading in Green Bay for Gotham Green, Josh Allen and company, looking to to start the season with a road win in the AFC East. This game could have significant consequence come playoff time in the AFC East. And as always, you can keep it on ESPN online or on our social media at ESPN Oz NZ as we cover this game and the entirety of the NFL season. This has been the NFL Brekkie Show for Week 1. Thank you for joining us. Laz and I will see you next week.